Or all right. Good afternoon, everyone. Bad girls go everywhere is an apt description for this discussion because all these women sitting here on the stage with me are trailblazers. I want to start, though, with Ms. Borwankar, Madam Commissioner, because she is what my daughter and her generation would, with reverence, call a badass. And ma'am, that is a compliment. And I say that because in her book, I have seen something that I've not seen in any other book, in any other autobiography that where there is a living author. And I'm going to just read out this one paragraph from, it's the last paragraph in one chapter, and it's a chapter about an extortion racket that's happening in Bombay, and industrialists are getting these threatening calls, and Madam Commissioner and her team, they trace these calls, and they find this the person, the accused behind it, and they're tracing his calls and trailing him, and they find that when they check his call records, he's frequently having calls with somebody who's based in Delhi, who he keeps referring to as sir. So then they make a plan to catch him and arrest him, and then they find that he's going to be in Delhi, so they make a team, including Madam Commissioner, who go down to Delhi to arrest him. And he happens to be in a 5-star hotel, and he happens to be meeting this gentleman who he keeps referring to as sir. And it's beautifully written, and there's suspense that all builds up. And then they take a call, looking at all factors, that they should not, they don't want to, ambush him in this 5-star hotel. They'll wait for him to come out. Then he leaves, they stop his car. They attempt to arrest him. There's an exchange of words. This gentleman, who he keeps referring to as sir, steps in. He's a former IB chief. And then he tries to come to the aid of this man to prevent his arrest. And this is the last paragraph. She quotes Lord Byron. She says, "For truth is always stranger than fiction." It says that eventually Vicky Malhotra, who is the accused, eventually was convicted in the extortion case. The former IB chief goes on to become National Security Advisor. It is Ajit Doval. That was the reaction I got when I read this book. And I'm telling you, this last line, this paragraph tells you everything you need to know about this book and this author. It is no nonsense. It is hard-hitting. It is unapologetic. It doesn't mince any words when it comes to corruption in police and the politician-police network. So my question to you, Madam Commissioner, is when you wrote this book, your family, your publisher, your lawyers, what did they say? And how come? Because you've taken names everywhere. Even in that rape case of the little child, you've taken the name of the businessman who raped this young child.
Thank you. Thanks for having me in your session. This is one chapter which I thought I will not talk about. It's very, very relevant today, so please read it in the book. We just can't talk about it now. And when it comes to taking names, I have gone through either I had the copies of the judgments, like this 8-year-old child's rape in Kolhapur in a Maruti car, or when two very powerful politicians whom we technically surveilled and we found that they were planning a riot in Pune, where I was the commissioner. And we filed a case against them, and the case was withdrawn. Again, I have substantiated all this through either court orders or the judgments which I have. Therefore, I think me and my publishers, we are safe. But rest is in the book, and it's for you to.
So my question is, when is the movie coming out?
Let me first also reply to, you know what? Yesterday my son rang up. There's an article today in Indian Express. Ma, be careful. And I keep hearing this from my sister also. And they keep saying, a doctor wrote about this Indian Express article, very bold. Actually, I don't think it's bold. what I write are based on facts. How you perceive that it's a threat to my life or that I am being bold, it's your perception. I am just stating what is happening in organized crime in that Baba Siddiqui murder in Mumbai and what repercussions it can have for us. And I'm tracing some of the gangs. But my own son, my sister, they perceive it to be a threat.
But we all know there are books where senior sources in the PMO say, former police officers say, nobody has come out openly, but ma'am has. But I want to move on.
And as for movies, yeah, there are many offers, but, well, we are so confused what to accept that we'll finally make up our mind. Thank you.
Kalpana Sankar, ma'am's book is a lot about breaking stereotypes like yours is. And there's one where she talks about when her early days when she was training at the National Police Academy in 1981, where she was the only woman in a batch of 70. And they had some jungle overnight. They were left in the jungle with the basic minimum, some dal and water and whatever. And some of her colleagues assumed that she will know how to make the khichdi, of course, except her khichdi was worse than everybody else's. Yeah. So I found that in your book a lot. Not just breaking stereotypes in your life, but also you being open to break the preconceived notions in your head as you went about your life.
Thank you. It's a very interesting question. I'm a nuclear scientist by profession. Then I got married to a civil servant. I could not pursue my career.
Just point it at your mouth. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a nuclear scientist by profession. I got married to a civil servant. We were posted in small towns, and so I could not pursue my career. Then I shifted my career. I worked for government for 10 years. Only there I got to understand how the government functions. It helped me later. I worked for a World Bank project with Planning Commission, how government functions. That is very important. Then I went to, from there I moved on to, I joined an NGO, not for profit. It had 3 people. From 3 people, we could expand the project to 10 countries, including Afghanistan and Brazil. And after a few years, I realized sustainability is very important for a not-for-profit. I acquired a company without any experience. I'm the first generation entrepreneur in my family. So Bellstar Microfinance Limited is one among the top 10 MFIs in the country. So all along, I have equipped myself for the journey. That's how I keep moving on.
But the biggest stereotype that your book has broken in my mind is this idea that if you want to work in an NGO, you have to be very passionate, you have to be very committed because you're going to have a shoestring budget. It's very hard. I mean, it's for women who want to do some work on the side while you're looking after your kids. Now, you've shown us that your organizations are like multinational companies and they have budgets and their accounts are in millions of dollars, and you can also run like a multinational company where all of your employees are getting healthcare, etc. So you have said, can you expand on this? You can have empathy for the less privileged and have a keen sense of business acumen.
Yeah, I was fortunate to be interviewed by Percy Barnavik. He was the former chairman of ABB. So he had managed big corporations. He used to tell me I've recruited more than 100,000 people in my life. So working with him, I learned a lot in terms of budgeting, in terms of even how my training is very important and how we have to empower the second line cadre. So I think I learned a lot about budgeting and financial planning from Percy Barnavik. And NGO also, like people with lot of commitment, they join, but they also have aspirations. They want to educate their children. Yeah. It is possible only if you pay corporate salaries. Then otherwise people tend to leave you. We have people who are associated with us for more than 20 years. So I think from day one, we have set the rules of the game. Like people should be honest and transparent, but will pay very good corporate salaries.
Fantastic. That's the change we want to see. Nusrat Jafri's book is fascinating. The Land We Call Home. Please pick it up. I loved it. You're a documenter of history. You've also been documenting the country. Your family, you're documenting your family's history. You're documenting India's history in the process and breaking many stereotypes along the way. But you know, there are so many layers to your book. And if someone asked me to describe it, I would just not know where to start because it's so complex. So why don't you just tell us what exactly, according to you, is this book about?
Thank you, Sarah. Also, good evening, everyone. I feel really honored to be sitting on such a good panel with incredibly successful women. So my book, This Land We Call Home, is about India, if I were to put it in one word. And India, the one that is becoming increasingly alien to us now, the India of the past. So I'm chronicling my family history of 3 or 4 generations and looking at it through the lens of caste and conversions and how it influenced the making of modern India. My forefathers from my maternal side were Bhatus, and Bhatus were a tribe that didn't ascribe to Hinduism, so they were outcasts, they were nomadic. Quite a few of them were into thievery. The literature available on Bhatus is all through an Orientalist lens. You'll find vivid descriptions of how Bhatus looked. They were hawk-eyed, sharp-nosed, like how you imagine a thief to be. And in reality, we don't know Bhatu stories because Bhatus didn't get a chance to tell them. And I also didn't know about my Bhatu identity because I grew up Muslim, and that's where multiple conversions that I've written about in my family took place. So my great-grandfather was Hardayal Singh, who converted because of a series of events which I've mentioned in the book, and I hope you guys grab a copy and read it. Some events mostly related to upper caste gatekeeping, not getting opportunities towards education, and just having a very, very bad time in society, led to them converting to Christianity. I speak about some missionaries who influenced this move. And great-grandfather, who was literate a little bit, not too much, with whatever he could pull in, he went to the seminary in Bareilly, and he became a deacon. He was called a reverend. So from being a Bhatu tribesman, he was now a reverend. And then my grandparents, he had 7 daughters. 6 of them grew up to be nurses. This is in the early 1930s, 40s. One of them went ahead and served in the Second World War as a nurse in Iraq. And then my mother grew up and married my father, who was Shia, another troubled minority in India and the world, as we see it now. So this land we call home is about my family's history with caste migrations, with respect to conversions, multiple during the road, and what was happening in India parallelly. So like my mother was born in 1947, so was India in many ways. BJP was formed in 1980, I was born in 1980. But what led to the making of BJP and what led to the making of the new fabric? I am a child of the 1992 Babri Masjid times. Histories are being rewritten now, identities are being formed. So this is a kind of amalgamation, if I were to give a very... So like India, my book is also multi-layered. So there are themes of feminism, there is themes of political identity, religious identity, minority identity, and just multiculturalism, the one that we grew up in, and the one that is now at the threshold of being lost.
See, that's why I didn't attempt it. I left it to her. Now, but sticking with stereotypes, you also tackle this contentious issue of, the many narratives of suspicion that surround conversions in India today. And you talk about your mom, and you say how your mother underwent a quiet conversion to Islam in 1969, a time at which such conversions could be made without drawing much attention or scrutiny.
Yes, absolutely. We live in the times of name it and we have a jihad to it, whether it's love jihad, food jihad, any jihad now. So we didn't have that in our parlance. We had just one main jihad that time. So yes, what is conversion now? You say the word and you never ascribe human free will or adult agency to it. Even when I tell some of my friends that my mother converted for love, they would genuinely get back to me and say, I'm sure there were some expectations there from her in-laws. And I've written about that in the book, how there weren't. And it was just...
And your father wasn't very religious himself.
So he was religious, but he looked at education as a more powerful way forward than just theology. So my mom was the more excited Muslim, and she wanted all of us to learn more and, just be the new Muslim in the house. But my dad was more like, there's a time for everything, pay attention to education. Because, see, my dad was also Muslim, and this is post-1947. Muslim identity then was also very layered. And it's been a marginalized community. So education is the key forward, even for my paternal side. So yeah, so what is conversion? Coming back to it, so while I was writing the book, I was conscious of the fact that there were multiple conversions in my family, but I was also conscious of the time that there were murders happening. Like there was the Graham Staines murder in 1999. I was a teenager, and that really shook me. From how I read it, he was working with leprosy patients, people were converting along the line, but was conversion his only motive, that you could kill him in a car with 2 minor children? That kind of just shook me. And I was like, how is it conversion worked for my family, but for the nation, it's such a big thing now? So I started exploring more on this, and I realized that conversion is not just a lower caste to looking for greener pastures method. It's also like, if you look at the history of conversion in India, in Maharashtra, Brahmins were converting first. And in northern India, more conversions to Islam from lower caste happened than to Christianity. So there was a lot to learn in this and explore, especially given the modern times.
So you talk about agency, and that was my view even before I read your book, that conversions are about agency and taking control of your own narrative and control of your own lives. Talking about that, Madam Commissioner, and I can only call you Madam Commissioner.
My khichdi was not worse than them. Huh? It was as bad as theirs.
So you are the proud recipient of the Humphrey Fellowship in 2001. But you talk about how you wrestled with, taking it up, because it would mean going to America for a year. You would have to leave your kids. Your kids were quite young. And then there was some advice that your friend gave you that was.
And she was much older to me. She was about.
Yeah. What was that made you change your mind?
In 1990s, I had gone for 4 months course in Australia, and I had missed my elder son, very badly. Now this time, it was 1 year fellowship in US. So 1 year, and my husband wasn't too keen that I should leave. And then I also had 2 children by then. But this lady, I was just going around asking, what should I do? The fellowship is very interesting. They are paying everything. I don't pay a penny. And I do internship for a year with the American police and also study in a university. So it's a double advantage. I am studying in the university. I am also interning with one of the police organizations. It was Minneapolis Police, and later on with the Interpol, Washington, D.C. This lady, when she heard me, she said, if it were a man, he would go on 1 leg. And here you are debating and doubting. Go ahead.
Kalpana Sankar, balancing family and work is a theme that keeps resurfacing in your book. How do you, as a trailblazer, as someone who is setting a precedent and someone who's being watched, how do you tackle this?
I think women leaders, we have to walk the talk. First, we have to be physically fit, and then keep equipping ourselves. We should not get any pose or because we are women or because of gender. It should be because we are competent to handle a particular assignment. So continuously did not come very easily. So whatever scholarship came along, I availed all the scholarships. It was very hard to be away from my daughter, family, and even late night parties, all that coming from a conservative background to adjust to that sort of a life. Even for a short-term course, when I did my TRIUMPH EMBA, all of them were multinational CEOs and CFOs. So the entire allowance which I used to take for the 2-week or the 3-week period, they used to spend on 1 day. But I kept going because I think spirituality also at one point it helps to be grounded, because you have to be confident. It is in your mind. So I transformed myself from a less confident person. By acquiring more education along the way, I became more confident, and by seeing me, like many women, the organization also felt they could also contribute. And overseas projects gave me a lot of happiness when we could replicate a very successful initiative in Afghanistan. Support came from Ministry of External Affairs. And I'm very proud of that project, because I feel what drones and billions of dollars could not achieve, we could transform, we could work with Talibans, and that project got a very good name for India. Then World Bank came, studied our model, and it was taken up as a pilot to scale it up across Afghanistan. So those experiences, I think for women to balance, we have to be fit, we have to keep equipping ourselves. Education and exposure really helps, and we should provide opportunity to women along the way. Very few women actually, I feel sorry, but very few, they are very frightened to provide opportunity to other women. I think we should provide opportunity to more women. So I've always been flexible. Even before COVID, I used to give work from home opportunities for women, because they are very particular about outcomes. I've seen excellent lawyers, but when they have having young children, they have to be at home, or taking care of a sick patient, a mother, they want to be there. So if you give flexible options, women can do wonderful, they can really scale up and contribute a lot. So that's how we have devised our strategy.
But I also found a sense of a wrestle with you that keeps coming up in your book. For example, you were very methodical about, I think you got a coach to help you with fashion and wearing Western clothes, as you put it, on an Indian body, because you were representing your country at these international fora, and how to behave in, when you go out for public dinners and for all of these international meetings. And very interestingly, I remember reading that she went for a conference, and I think she went for a conference where she was the only one representing her country, and given her background, as she says, she just found herself standing by herself. But what was the takeaway from that? She vowed to herself that she will never send anybody from her company to one of these things alone. She will at least send them in pairs. So this is an example of how once you have experienced something, be the change you want to see. But when you were at INSEAD, you said you were one of 20 women leaders there, and you were the only one who had kids.
Yeah.
Right? But at the same time, you described these women, and you said that they were very fierce and they were very independent, and they were pursuing their careers without any children. So they felt free, a sense of freedom. So, but I didn't get a sense of judgment when you said that. But I did get a sense of, could life have been different? Or
Yeah, because my daughter was born after 8 years. So a lot of questions raised, like, why are you focusing so much on career? You should plan your family life. But I saw very confident women in 35, 36, but they were happy having pets, and they were talking about their career. So I felt
cat ladies.
we can also lead a life like that. It's not necessary always we should focus on stereotypes and be the women, what men want to be, want you to be in India, you can also break the stereotypes. So these foreign trainings are very helpful, because you see others, and then from them you will also learn.
Nusrat, I want to just read out this chapter, some 4. You say, while Hardayal, that's your father, and Kalyani, that's your mother, grandfather and grandmother, that's right. Great-grandfather, weren't directly involved in the great struggle for India's independence. They had been waging their own daily battles for freedom, battles that never made it to the history books, but were still important. The freedom that Hardayal and Kalyani pursued was just as important to them as individuals, but it held significance for India as a whole. Could you explain?
Yes. So one of the core themes of the book is that the history of a nation is dependent on the history of its people. So we don't really hear stories of marginalized people. The stories we are told of marginalized people are through the voices of majoritarian people, like people who are in majority, So there were many battles that my great-grandparents were fighting and coming out of. And within that, within the story of the Bhatu community, within the story of conversions, conversion migrations, lies the story of India. the history of India, sorry. And history of India, as we know now, is rapidly changing. The villains of yesterday are now garlanded, are honored. The events in history which we say we grew up at, like my coming of age time was Babri Masjid. We just heard that the NCRT removed the word mosque from that, and it's now a 3-domed structure that was brought down. So these are the histories. I mean, what would a 12-year-old girl be feeling when you're in Lucknow and in your neighborhood there's a mosque being fallen? And this is the seat of Ganga Jamni Tehzeeb, and Lucknow has never had any communal clashes, not till now. We've had no communal riots. But there were far-fetching effects in Bombay, in other places. So what was my history and what was India's history at that time are so interlaced that we sometimes we just look at what the main thing was and not the repercussions of that were. So that's why chronicling my great-grandfather's story has a direct impact on what India's story was that time.
And it's important to have it put down somewhere, an account of it for history, in our history. I want to talk a little bit about craft. One of the commonalities of all of your books are the copious notes, acknowledgements, footnotes, etc. So when did you, can start with you, ma'am, when did you know that you were going to write a book? Had you been keeping notes? Were you always meticulous? How did it happen?
One year I didn't get along with my boss, so I went on leave. And I wrote my first book, and that is to encourage youth. Despite my personal distress at that time, I felt civil services are a very good option. So I wrote my book, and I thought I can write more. Because that book was really appreciated by the youth. Then I wrote my second one, which is Inspector Chowgule. The first one is Leaves of Life, which has police anecdotes, and then lessons learned, and then action points. Somehow it really was appreciated by the youth. Then I took 2 simple police stories through a book called Inspector Chowgule, which is an imaginary character, but the stories are real. That also got a good response, but people kept asking me, कुछ adult जो experiences है वो लिखो. That's the time when I started looking up for my old notes for Supreme Court orders. One case this rape case of 9-year-old child was finally decided by the Supreme Court after 11 years. So that made me question, that why are we taking so long? And then I also accessed High Court, Supreme Court. Luckily, they're all digitized now. So after writing the 2 books, I took out the orders, judgments, my old notes, because I knew I can be dragged to the court, and I must substantiate each police case which I am writing. So it's been a long journey, but it's been worth it. Thank you.
Kalpana, did you also have a run-in with your boss? Were you not getting along with them?
No. My career has been different because I was a researcher by profession. So from day one, I started making a lot of notes, and I got trained as a monitoring and evaluation officer. Because the first time when I was working for the NGO, I went to meet up with the collector to request his support to get the children out of labor. And then when I said that the district had got an award as child labor free district, and we identified some 400 children who were working in weaving looms. He said, most probably you NGOs are getting grant. You show some children as child laborers, and foreigners are willing to give grant. So that was an important point I felt we should document. Then we started involving the youth, the community leaders, and also the local sarpanch. When he certified and said, this many children in our village, they are out of school, then the government authorities, they could not, they had to accept our findings and render support. So I think documentation is very, very important. Unlike civil service, where They have a lot of authority. Being an NGO, we are as fragile or as weak as the people we serve, be it the marginalized women or the marginalized children. So even for getting commitment from multilateral institutions, ADB has funded us, World Bank has funded us, only because of our data, the way we went about analyzing the root cause, how we could articulate a particular problem. They were convinced and they were willing to fund. So it was very important. And one more thing, to see, I'm handling two institutions. I'm the chairperson of Hand in Hand right now, and I'm the managing director of Belstar Microfinance Limited, which is regulated by RBI. And because of the documentation experience only, we are able to provide employment to 13,500 people in our country. I feel that is a very big undertaking. I've been able to do because of the meticulous documentation.
I'll open it up for questions after this. Can I just get a show of, okay, so there are questions. Fine. Go ahead, Nusrat.
Yeah, your question was on research, right? Yeah.
The craft, the writing, because this is your first book,
yes,
and
yes,
you're a filmmaker.
Yes, I'm a cinematographer.
Yeah. So how did you make the transition? What was required? Why did you do it? Tell us something about the process.
I still continue to be a cinematographer. And I've also written. I've had some background with blogging, with journalism, with the Pioneer and with CNBC Awaaz. So when the pandemic hit, there was also lull in work because we were just in lockdown. At that point, I got into this fellowship called South Asia Speaks, and my proposal was liked, and I got a mentor, a very good mentor, Achal Malhotra, who's also an oral historian. And I think I just utilized that time very well to finally write down the book, but the book has been with me for as long as I can remember. There was also tracing family history through oral accounts. So there's only that much that we can write. We have to corroborate it with factual history on what was happening in India. So there was also a lot of discovery about India, about caste system, because I grew up in a privileged non-caste house because we were upper caste as you know, that Indian Muslims have also very conveniently adopted the caste system. And so I was privileged and I grew up without caste. So when I was writing this book, I had to unfurl a lot of layers of that. And I couldn't just randomly write things. I had to also write where I found this source. So there was a lot of research I did on caste system, so an important discovery that I made during the writing of this book is that my great-grandparents call themselves Bhatu Rajputs. Bhatu Rajputs as such it's a strange term because you can either be Bhatu or you can be Rajputs. So there is a process. There is a process of Rajputization, which is very important because they were soldiers in Maharana Pratap's army, so some of them got the privilege or the concession to keep a handlebar mustache, which my great-grandfather got to keep. But beyond that, did they enjoy a Kshatriya status in society? No. So I explored these themes as and when I discovered, and they're relevant in Indian history and Indian caste movements. So yeah, just making lots of notes. And also modern Indian history you have to be very cautious and you have to give a source in that. I don't want it on my shoulder.
All right, can we pass the mics around? Is this?
Hi, my question's for you, sorry. I'm a life writer myself, and I think I'm quite curious about, firstly, do you find yourself thinking that your book sits fluidly between a life writing genre and a historical genre? If it does sit in the historical genre, my question to you is, how cautious were you in then eliminating, like, let's say, the Western bibliography or the white male bibliography or the majoritarian bibliography in context to you actually moving towards anti-colonizing and talking about marginalized communities? And with specificity towards your personal narratives that you talk about in the book. I am curious about how that referential system works and then how that fits into that fluidity between, like, let's say, a historical genre and a life writing genre? I don't know if that makes sense, but.
It's for me, right? Yeah. Yeah, that's a very nice question. And when you're chronicling your family history or anyone else's biography, there is a lot of sieving that goes through. You have to choose. You have to also present everything honorably, accurately, and also like keep into account different views on the same thing. So a lot of literature on Bhatus and other so-called criminal tribes exists through an Orientalist lens. And as I told you, there were very disparaging descriptions, which I would read, stomach, and then think on how to produce. I would often produce, if you read the book, they are there. But I've also given the other view on, did I see my great-grandparents as that, or does my mother or my mama remember anyone like that in the family? So you have to make these informed choices. Then about colonialism, so as much as as a student of history, I have had long, lengthy debates with my grandmother. She was a supporter of the crown. And it used to surprise me, and I was like, oh my God, how is this possible? She used to get really livid and leave her house sometimes, but then they were from that time. She benefited from a missionary background, and I look at it as she was lifted from her Bhatu lifestyle and brought to this system where she was eating dosa with fork and knife and not knowing her language too much. So for me, I would question, because I had history to my side, I had years to my side, but they were coming out of a very, very solid caste gatekeeping system to this, where they were allowed freedom to do anything, and then they had these white men roaming around in India who looked aspiring to them. And they were also their saviors at one point. They looked at them like that. So I have presented the views that you're talking about. I have acknowledged these these things within me as well. Like, I've had to address them.
One more question here.
Yeah. Good afternoon, ma'am. Ma'am, I've got 3 issues to discuss with you.
That's quite tough,
Yes.
huh?
Firstly, no, don't. These are easy.
पुलिस ऑफिसर एक टाइम पे एक ही इशू डिस्कस करता
No,
है.
ma'am, kindly. All 3 issues relate to you.
Okay.
Your story is fantastic.
आपने पढ़ी तो है नहीं
Oh,
अभी
कोई
तक.
बात नहीं. Whatever you have narrated here, I'm going to purchase the book of yours. Okay?
Thank you, thank you.
Firstly, I'm an ex-army captain. Secondly, I'm a religious man. And thirdly, my wife is president of Patiala Book Lovers Retreat with
So when am I getting the invite?
Ma'am, kindly. We're online and offline, these members.
Offline.
Yes, online as well as offline.
My preference is for offline.
No, kindly.
Patiala जावांगे जी.
मैडम हजे नहीं.
Okay.
अच्छा, firstly, you have been a very good detective, and you got your training from United Nations or America, whatever. Tell me one thing. You see, they people, gangsters, they have got WhatsApp and the normal calls. These are easily traceable. WhatsApp and this thing. Don't you feel, the audience will also learn something from this, that this Signals is a better this thing, app, in which the calls are not traceable.
You mean for criminals?
Yes,
Should
quite
use
right.
Signals.
Not for the officers also. You see, their calls can be detected. Kisse kiya and what are the things? Because my calls have been detected. Secondly, I have retired an excise commissioner and had cracked many scams. And the latest scam was 45 VAT on 45,000 crores worth. There are 7 zeros in 1 crore. So 45 into 10 zeros. Okay? So you will get confused when you are going to just, उसमें भी नहीं आता, calculator पे भी नहीं आता. Okay? Now.
Third question.
And,
Third question.
Third
We run
question.
out of time.
इसमें जो सा है, I had filed a writ petition. This is second question only, continuity of that. I had filed a writ petition, PIL, in the High Court against that officer, against that commissioner of mine who had compromised VAT on that. And I've got all the evidence, and he purchased the senior judge of the High Court ultimately and got my PIL dismissed. So I went to SLP, to the Supreme Court.
Okay.
I can write.
All right, sir. Finish up the question.
And kindly, in this, I had requested and made CBI also a party as respondent number 6. They didn't do anything. I would like to know how can we involve CBI and what action can I take?
Ma'am, I'll request
Number
you
4.
to give a
पहले दो
short
ही दे दूं
answer.
मैं, हाँ. So
Because
पहले
and you
का
can take it
answer है,
offline with
all
sir later.
apps can be tracked. All apps.
All
So even signals.
including signals.
Yeah. Number 2, कि आपने PIL फाइल किया है, so is it pending?
No, मैं SLP में जो है ना,
SLP is still
Ma'am,
pending?
No.
You can discuss this with sir privately.
That was, ma'am, that was
Help sir out with
accepted.
this predicament.
It had quashed the.
Sir, I'm going to ask you to speak separately with ma'am after this.
Okay.
And ma'am will help you out as much as she can. But right now, I just want to stick with the
Ma'am,
books because
okay,
we're very
can you
short on
kindly
time.
share-
No, sir, you can please take
Can
it
you
with ma'am.
kindly
She'll take
share
time
your
out with you.
mobile number?
No, she,
About
nobody.
which I will.
You will sit
Yeah,
and
yeah,
chat
not here,
with him
Okay, thank you.
separately. You can have tea with sir.
Yeah,
after
Thank
this.
you, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Ma'am, we have Shankar, your daughter sitting there in the second row. At one point in your life, you write that in this book, she asks you that if you had a chance to do this again, would you do it differently? And what was your response over there? You would do some things differently, right? That's what you said. Why and what are they?
Because not for profit, as I was telling you, when I was working for the government, we felt protected, especially for women. We have the legal cell, we have the vigilance. Yeah, because when you work for the government, there's a lot of protection, but as a not for profit, like child labor problem, you cannot solve in a year. To show some impact, at least 3 years, 5 years, because you have to work with the families, work with the children. They have to understand the importance of education. Women at least are aspirational. We are working with 30 lakh women across 18 states. If you give them some hand-holding support, they are able to pursue their entrepreneurial journey. So I feel it takes a lot of time to nurture. So it is not that easy when it comes to like short-term projects and all that stuff. So can you repeat your question once again?
What would you do differently?
Differently, I felt like, so getting good, convincing donors of long-term grants, because now with the CSR amendment, they're giving only 1 year grant. We can do some interventions, build some Anganwadis, renovate some schools, but for transformational projects, long-term funding is required. So I was telling her, like, I would have started off with the for-profit company, and because that gives you a lot of confidence when you run a for-profit enterprise, and with the profit we can run a NGO. So I would have taken that route.
Ma'am Borwankar, I wanted to ask you, you've had run-ins with the press in the past, and in Bombay there was this phase where there were a lot of encounters.
Bachi, I had sued Times of India and won the case. Full one chapter I written about it.
This is about a lot of encounters were taking place. The policemen had gotten too big for their boots. They felt that they were heroes and rock stars themselves. They were in a cozy nexus with journalists, and then ma'am found herself on the front page of one of the Times of India's Mirror Now or one of those its sister publications, where they questioned her credibility and how much you were cracking down on these encounters, etc. But she basically sued them and won. But it wasn't easy and it took a long time. But I wanted to, if you could also talk about the fact that the police today is dealing with another element, which is the Indian press. We've seen this in the Riya Chakravarti case. We see it in all of these cases where the trial takes place in the media before the police can say anything. We see it in the Bengal doctor's case. Now a different truth is coming out.
And remember that Arushi case, the dentist daughter. So my personal opinion, this I can't substantiate, but my hunch is where media gets in, police investigation becomes very difficult and sometimes loses the track. So we get better conviction, better investigation if we are not being constantly under watch. So that's my personal take. कि आप दूर रहो हमसे. Let us, let police officers investigate the crime in a professional way instead of you trying to guide us and actually misguide us.
Nusrat?
One more thing I'll tell you. Police works on the two pillars of sub-inspectors and inspectors. It's not IPS. It's the inspectors and sub-inspectors who actually run police, and they sometimes do get affected by media.
Of course.
They get depressed so many times. Yeah. They feel, ma'am, देखो मेरे बारे में ये लिख दिया, हमारी investigation के बारे में ये लिख दिया. So
let me just repeat, in case you didn't hear what Bachi is saying, that many times the information is coming from the cops. So the cops are also involved with playing journalists and using them to their benefit.
Yeah, I don't rule that out. Yeah.
Okay.
But leave us alone most of the time, and we will give you show you better results.
Okay, Nusrat, I wanted to ask you about this very interesting aspect in your book that you brought up that I was completely unaware of, and probably our audience would be more aware than I am. But we've all seen that film growing up and we loved it, Avara, which talked about the concept of criminality being hereditary. Will the child of a thief always be a thief? And one always thought that was a movie. It was a movie script and a movie line. But according to you in this book, that actually there were tribes where this was a reality for them.
That's the Oriental lens I was talking about. That over 200 tribes in India were known as habitual offenders. Crime was inherited. They would be forced to stay in, this is post 1872 onwards, when the government passed the Criminal Tribes Act, and they made several amendments up till 1926, where they spoke about crime being an inherited aspect in your life, like you have crime in your genes. So there were lots of thinkers like Lombroso who did experiment in Italy, and this is the kind of research that was happening, that even if you keep them in gated settlements managed by Salvation Armies or some other missionaries, they would invariably end up as criminals. So, but this is what I said was speculation and a gross stereotyping of an entire community. And there were gross repercussions that they had to face. So when I was being introduced, the criminal was supposed to be in inverted commas here. So, and in 1952, India repealed the Criminal Tribes Act and gave it a gentler but same name, the Habitual Offenders Reform Act. So, I mean, it's the same. They are fair, yes, they are living in non-gated communities, but secluded. They're not gated as such. But like if you were to talk about places like Kanpur, there's a settlement there called Raj Unnayan Basti, which was a settled community and it was freed after independence. People are living there in the same. There are people who have myths about them having greyhounds and wahan jaoge to jeb kaat lenge and wo zaban ke niche blade rakhte hain, you know, stuff. And those communities are also like pushing these sometimes when simpletons go up to them and say, yahan par ye hota hai kya? So if you see on YouTube, they're like, haan, hum log ye sab karte hain. Because I also like to give similar answers when people ask me, what do you wear for swimming? As I was asked in DU, because I'm Muslim, so I also say burqa, and they take it also. So there are several. The life of denotified tribes is pretty much stagnant. It's the same in India, and they are in popular culture. It's being perpetuated. Like Shamshera came out very recently, pushing the same envelope.
Well, we have a few minutes. We have a few minutes left, so I'm just going to ask you what's next. You have a question?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I have a question for you, ma'am. My name is Indrani Mukherjee, and for several years I was in the eye of the storm, and the reason I want to ask you this question is because of a police investigation. Now, what do you do when there is I have two questions. One is, like you already mentioned, there's always a lot of media pressure. So, does it usually happen that when there is media pressure, it is very important for the cops to just nail anybody because of the pressure from the media and the public, A. B, when later, in the later course of the trial or case, eventually, when it comes out that the investigation was botched up itself, what happens to, because the lives of the accused, like it happened to me, you know, my entire life was turned topsy-turvy till the DNA expert came and said, actually, he fudged the reports. So what happens to the investigating officers after that? Or when, let's say, the prosecution loses a case, like if you win the case, the accused is punished. There is penalty, right? So what happens when the accused wins? Are the cops prosecuted for that?
So your case is of which year?
This is 2015.
2015. So this is my favorite topic.
Yes, thank
See,
you.
2015 case not decided in 2024.
That's
9 years.
correct.
And it was quite a sensational case
Absolutely right.
in Mumbai. And I am from Mumbai, Maharashtra Police. So point number one, yes, I don't rule out that officers do get swayed sometimes. That's point number one. Point number two, see, even if I want to take action against my investigating officer who probably has botched up the case, having it pending for 10 years, gives him a way out. So all of us have to invest in criminal justice system, which means we must have more investigating officers, better forensic experts. Now, she is alleging, I'm not sure, whether the forensic report was for, what word did you use, ma'am?
Ma'am, I didn't actually, this is not my allegation.
Forged. No, so...
No, it's not my allegation. The DNA expert had come and said that on the stand.
Since I'm not aware, but I'm saying if India wants a robust, healthy, effective criminal justice system, a trial of a session tribal, which means a serious case of murder, must conclude within a year and next 6 months for appeals. 9 years, this case has not ended. Trial has not ended. It will take another 9 years for appeal, where police will also go in appeal that acquittal is wrong, and defense will go in appeal that the conviction is wrong. I have quoted in today's Indian Express a case of Manik Chand Gutka and J.M. Joshi, where they had engaged the services of no less than Dawood Ibrahim to settle their financial score. Case of 2004, when I was the chief of crime branch, convicted in 2023. So please, this is the kind of audience I want to address to, that are we a democracy or a banana republic?
Ma'am, I have one more question, because I had filed for a speedy trial. I got the order in my favor, but after I filed for a speedy trial, they came up with a list of another 190 witnesses, and nobody's shown up in the last few months. So we just go to court, sign, show our faces, and come back. So do you think that prosecution is delaying the case purposely? I'm just asking you this question because you've been at a very senior position.
So I won't be able to comment on your particular case.
Not my case, but does it usually happen?
But see, along with your case, I am telling you another case with equally influential people coming up with conviction after 19 years. So this is what is happening in our courts. We don't have investigating officers, judicial infrastructure is poor, forensic labs, as you have flagged, are in a poor state. What are we doing? And then we feel we will have the economy of China going that fast.
But what happens?
Very completely, I want to now, again, I'm going to ask you to take this offline. Both of you can do this on the sidelines. Yes. I just want to ask quickly, short, if we could get, because we have to wind up for the next session or tea. What next, both in terms of books and in your other works?
Because I want to continue my journey, because I want to use my intelligence to be of help to people. there are a lot of children still who are not having access to proper education, and women with some help, they are able to lead a life of dignity. So writing a book, I have not decided, but I will continue my journey.
I'm hoping to shoot something, but there's a lot of promotion activity for the book, so I think I'm going to be busy with that. But I'm also I'm very fascinated with the topic of migration to foreign countries, given the case in Italy and the whole nexus that came out, caste-related again. So I'm toying with the idea of a historical fiction this time, but regarding caste-based migrations to different countries where people get employed and they are not legal either.
Well, we hope to see you back at the Lit Fest. And ma'am, of course, movie, apart from the movie?
Movie, I told you we are confused what to accept. But I was also thinking of another book, and I get sometimes surprised that I would again like to write for the youth. I think, of course, I am 67. I feel my age people have let down the country and let down the society so much that I find all of us very boring. So I would like to address the youth and with a positive message, and maybe how to negotiate life better than what I did. I learned from trial and error, and I feel maybe I can share so that they don't find the path so difficult or complicated.
I'm being glared at. I have to wind up, but I just want to ask Ma'am Shankar, quick words. You say you want to encourage young people to go into this non-profit sphere. I don't know if we have many young people, but we have parents who may not approve, who may say, children, why don't you do other better jobs? Last word, what would you say to them?
No, today is a very interesting phase because of the CSR Act, all the companies are looking at qualified professionals in that space, and even in the impact investment space, they are looking at social investment because they want to feel good at the end of the day, not only make money. And ESG is becoming a very important buzzword. I think there's a bright future for people who want to be involved in the development sector.
All right, I think that's a great note to end on. Thank you all, and thank you to our wonderful panelists here today.
Thank you, Sarah. And thanks to the audience.